You've seen salt every single day of your life, on your food, on your table, on your tongue. It looks ordinary, doesn't it? A grain so small you barely notice it. But what if I told you this grain carries 70 secrets of healing, whispers of protection, and a hidden reminder from Allah that nothing in your life is ever truly small? Tonight, I will take you into the mystery of salt. You'll see why the saints used it in healing, why scholars spoke of its cures, and why the humble grain you ignore every day holds the same lesson your soul has been starving for, that the smallest things carry the heaviest barakah. If you stay, you'll discover why salt is more than seasoning. It is a mirror of your faith, a shield against what you cannot see, a reminder that Allah hides oceans of power in what looks like dust. And once you taste this truth, you will never see your life as ordinary again. Don't blink, don't walk away, because if you do, you will leave thinking salt is just a grain. But if you stay, you will leave knowing it is a golden whisper from Allah, sent only to those who pay attention. Salt, the grain that carries 70 secrets of healing. Out of everything that could have been chosen, it was salt. Not honey, not saffron, not something rare from faraway lands. Salt, the simplest thing on the table, the one people overlook, the one no one praises, the one no one takes pride in. You buy salt without thinking twice. You spill it without care. You taste it without noticing. And yet, hidden inside those small white crystals are 70 secrets of healing. Think about this. 70, not 7, not 10. 70 ways the body, the heart, the soul, and even the home can find protection and cure through something so ordinary. If you sat to write them all down, you might struggle to think of 10. But the truth is this: even if you cannot name them, the blessing still exists. That is how Allah works. He hides oceans in drops. He hides storms in whispers. He hides entire worlds in grains. Salt sits quietly, almost invisible, yet nothing tastes complete without it. You can cook the finest dish, use the most expensive ingredients, put hours of effort into preparation, but if salt is missing, the entire dish is ruined. This is the hidden lesson. Greatness does not always come from what is big. Greatness often hides in what is small. Salt does not boast, but it completes. Salt does not shine, but it protects. Salt does not stand tall, but it carries weight. Scholars and healers of the past spoke of its cures. They said it strengthens the body, cleanses the stomach, helps digestion, removes toxins, and even guards against unseen harms. But beyond the science, beyond the health, there is something deeper. Salt carries barakah. Salt carries a divine touch. Salt carries a reminder that nothing in this life is empty if Allah has placed His wisdom inside it. Look at the contrast. The world praises gold, yet it cannot heal. The world praises diamonds, yet they cannot preserve. The world praises power, yet it cannot protect. But salt, the most ordinary, the cheapest thing on earth, carries secrets of protection that kings and rulers cannot buy. What does this teach you? It teaches you that your eyes should not be fooled by appearances. You may see something small, but to Allah it is great. You may see yourself as weak, but to Allah you are capable. You may see your dua as just words, but to Allah it shakes the heavens. Salt whispers this truth every day. Each grain is like a tiny sermon, reminding you, do not underestimate the small. Do not look down on the ordinary. Do not dismiss what looks simple, because sometimes Allah hides His greatest powers in what the world ignores. When you put salt on food, it dissolves. It disappears into the dish. It gives flavor, but loses its form. And yet, without that disappearance, without that sacrifice, the food is tasteless. This is what humility looks like. This is what service looks like. This is what faith looks like. The lesson is not just about salt. It is about you. You, who may feel small. You, who may feel invisible. You, who may think your life doesn't matter. Salt teaches you otherwise. Salt teaches you that even in smallness there is greatness. Even in silence there is power. Even in humility there is healing. When you taste it, you're not just tasting flavor. You are tasting a reminder that Allah places oceans of strength in the smallest of things. And if He can do that with a crystal of salt, what do you think He can do with your heart? It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't shine like gold. It doesn't sparkle like jewels. It doesn't smell like perfume. It sits quietly in the corner of the kitchen, unseen, uncelebrated, unnoticed. Yet everything else depends on it. This is how Allah teaches through creation. He shows us that the loudest is not the strongest. The brightest is not the most powerful. The most expensive is not the most valuable. True value is in the unseen role something plays. Salt proves that greatness is not in being noticed, but in being necessary. You could prepare a table with every spice, every luxury, every dish, but if salt is missing, people will frown. The food will feel lifeless. The effort will be wasted. One grain missing, and everything changes. This is how small things shift entire worlds. A small tear at night can erase years of sins. A small act of kindness can heal a wounded soul. A small prayer, whispered in silence, can rewrite destiny. A small grain of salt can rescue an entire meal. Do you see the pattern? Allah hides power in smallness, so that you never underestimate what looks ordinary. Salt is also a protector. It preserves meat, fish, and food from decay. Without it, rot spreads fast. With it, life extends. The Sufi teachers used to say, "Salt is the mirror of remembrance." It preserves the heart, the way it preserves flesh. Without it, corruption enters. With it, the soul is saved. Every pinch of salt is a symbol. It says, preserve yourself through remembrance. Protect your heart the way salt protects food. Do not let your soul spoil in forgetfulness. Salt also cleanses. People use it to wash wounds. It stings, yes, but it heals. It burns, but it disinfects. It hurts for a moment, but it saves from deeper pain. This is the way of faith too. Sometimes the words of truth sting. Sometimes surrender feels heavy. Sometimes patience feels like burning. But all of it is healing. All of it saves you from greater pain. Salt is silent medicine. It does not come with noise, but it carries power. It teaches you. Healing is not always sweet. Sometimes it tastes bitter. Sometimes it burns. But in the end, it saves you. And isn't that the way Allah works with us? Sometimes He removes what we love. Sometimes He closes doors. Sometimes He puts us in painful situations, not to harm us, but to heal us. Not to punish us, but to protect us. Not to destroy us, but to disinfect us. Salt is proof that healing often hides in what you resist. Salt is proof that the cure may not always be sweet, but it is real, and it is saving you. And then there is its humility. Salt is everywhere. Everyone uses it, but no one thanks it. People thank the cook. People praise the dish. People admire the flavors. But no one ever says, the salt was perfect. Salt is a servant, never a master. It gives everything, but takes no credit. It disappears into the food, losing its form, yet leaving its impact. This is the sign of true believers. They do not seek fame. They do not seek praise. They do not seek recognition. They disappear in service, but the world feels their impact. Salt teaches you to work quietly, to serve silently, to give everything without demanding recognition, because Allah sees, even when no one else does. So salt becomes a teacher of humility, a teacher of hidden strength, a teacher of unseen service. It whispers, disappear, but let your presence change everything. Melt away, but let your touch give life. Stay hidden, but let your impact remain forever. And perhaps that is why it carries 70 secrets of healing. Because it is humble, because it is small, because it is silent, because it is overlooked. Allah placed power in what no one values. And He did this to remind you. If He can put 70 cures in salt, what do you think He can put in your patience? In your tears? In your whispers? In your smallest acts of goodness? Salt, a silent shield between you and the unseen. Most people think of salt only as taste, but the people of wisdom knew it was also a shield not made of iron or steel, but of light. A shield that doesn't clang or shine, but one that silently absorbs, silently protects. Salt has always been more than flavor. It carries a hidden presence. When placed in the right way, when used with intention, it becomes a veil, a silent guard, standing between you and the unseen. The unseen is real. You cannot see envy, but it stings. You cannot see evil whispers, but they enter the mind. You cannot see harm written for you, but you feel its weight. And sometimes protection does not arrive through swords or locks. Sometimes protection arrives through what looks too ordinary to be noticed. The righteous, the healers, the Sufis, they understood this. They used salt not for superstition, but for wisdom. They would mix it in water for cleansing. They would scatter it around corners of their homes. They would use it as a quiet defense. Not because salt itself holds power on its own, but because Allah allowed it to carry this hidden capacity. Because in every crystal is a reminder. Even in silence, there is defense. Salt absorbs. It draws in what is harmful. It neutralizes what is heavy. It cleanses what is dirty. And in the spiritual world, it acts the same way. It absorbs what the eye cannot see. It neutralizes what the heart cannot carry. It cleanses what the soul cannot explain. Think about it. When you throw salt on ice, it melts. When you put salt in water, it clears. When you place salt on wounds, it burns but heals. Salt transforms things. Salt shifts energy. Salt changes the environment. Now imagine it acting as a shield. Each grain sitting quietly, unseen, but working. Each grain standing like a guard, taking in what was meant for you. Each grain silently fighting for you, so you never even know the battles it won. This is why elders, healers, and people of wisdom would never ignore salt. They knew its place. They knew its role. They knew it was not just about food. It was about safety. The unseen world is filled with things you and I cannot measure. Envy can cross a room without sound. Whispers can cross a mind without warning. Harm can cross a distance without steps. And yet Allah, in His mercy, created veils, barriers, shields. And sometimes those shields are not grand walls. Sometimes those shields are hidden in grains. Salt does not announce itself. It does not say, "I am protecting you." It simply does its work quietly. And that is the beauty of a true shield. The best shield is the one you never have to notice. So salt whispers to you. 5. Do not think protection always comes from big things. Sometimes your greatest safety is placed inside the smallest things. The Sufi masters used to remind their students, salt is the soldier you do not see, standing guard where your eyes cannot. And that is exactly what it is. A quiet soldier, a silent bodyguard, an uncelebrated protector. And isn't this how Allah's mercy often works? Most of the time, you never see the danger you were saved from. Most of the time, you don't even know the harm that was blocked before it reached you. Most of the time, you walk safely through storms you never even noticed. Salt is a reminder of that. It says, I stand where you cannot. I absorb what you don't even know is coming. I take in what was too heavy for you. Salt does not sleep. It does not rest. It does not say, I am tired today. Every moment it is present. It is working. Even when you don't notice it. You pour it in your food and forget it. You leave it on the shelf and ignore it. But salt is alive with a purpose. Every grain carries an unseen assignment. It is a soldier that never asks for reward. It is a shield that never asks for recognition. It is a servant that never asks for thanks. It just stands guard, quietly, without complaint. Now, reflect. Isn't this how true protection works? The things that truly protect you often go unnoticed. The air you breathe, the heartbeat inside you, the unseen angels guarding you. And yes, even something as simple as salt. Salt's shield is subtle, but powerful. When placed in water, it strengthens the intention of cleansing. When scattered in a home, it shifts the atmosphere. When touched by the believer, it becomes a silent reminder that safety doesn't only come through locks, guards, or weapons. Sometimes safety comes through grains. The unseen is vast. Jealousy travels faster than footsteps. Harmful whispers pierce deeper than arrows. Darkness tries to slip through cracks you don't even know exist. But Allah, in His mercy, gave creation tools. Some tools are grand, others are small. Salt is one of those small tools, so small you overlook it, but so powerful you would regret life without it. Salt teaches you that Allah's protection is layered. He doesn't just protect you with what you see, He protects you with what you don't. And sometimes, He places shields where you least expect them. When you hold salt in your hand, it looks weak. It looks fragile. It looks like it could be crushed easily. But in its fragility lies its strength, because it doesn't fight by force. It fights by absorption. It fights by taking in. It fights by neutralizing. Salt doesn't reflect harm back. It dissolves it. It doesn't shout at danger. It swallows it. It doesn't show its battle scars. It simply disappears in the fight. This is a powerful lesson for the soul. Not every battle is won by loudness. Not every defense is about striking back. Sometimes, the greatest protection is silence. Sometimes the greatest shield is absorption. Sometimes the strongest guard is the one that disappears while saving you. Salt becomes a reflection of hidden warriors. The mothers who pray for their children in silence. The fathers who sacrifice without ever telling their struggles. The friends who protect your reputation in rooms you will never enter. The angels who guard you while you sleep. All silent shields. All unseen defenders. All like salt, working, absorbing, protecting, without asking for thanks. And isn't this what we need to remember? That life is not protected only by what we can see. Your locks may guard your doors, but who guards your soul? Your money may guard your body, but who guards your heart? Your knowledge may guard your mind, but who guards your spirit? Salt is one of the reminders Allah placed in the world. A reminder that protection does not always look like protection. Sometimes it looks ordinary. Sometimes it looks small. Sometimes it looks like salt. The elders would say, "Keep salt near, for it is the veil that swallows what your eyes cannot." And they knew what they were saying. They lived with wisdom, not superstition, but recognition. They recognized that Allah places His secrets in what we take for granted. Salt whispers when you see it. You are never as unprotected as you think. Shields exist where you least expect them. And even when you feel alone, there are guards around you that you do not see. So, the next time you sprinkle salt, remember, it is not only flavor, it is not only preservation, it is not only health, it is a shield, a silent shield, one of the many shields Allah has surrounded you with, so that you could walk safely through storms you never knew existed. Salt preserves flesh, faith preserves souls. Salt is not just taste. It is time. It is preservation. It is the reason why flesh does not rot. why food does not spoil, why what is alive can be kept from decay. Before freezers, before fridges, before modern machines, people relied on salt. They rubbed it on meat, they soaked fish in it, they packed food with it. Why? Because salt could do what nothing else could. It could fight decay. It could stop corruption. It could hold back rot. This is one of its secret powers: preservation. It keeps what would otherwise die alive for longer. It keeps what would otherwise collapse standing for longer. And this is not just about food. It is a message for the soul. Just as salt preserves flesh, faith preserves souls. Without salt, food spoils. Without faith, the soul spoils faster. Look at meat without salt. Within hours, it begins to smell. Within days, it becomes unfit to touch. It looks strong in the beginning, but slowly, silently, rot takes over. The same is true of the heart without faith. It may look alive, it may look strong, it may look full, but without remembrance, without connection, without faith, the rot sets in. First, silently, then obviously, and soon it becomes unrecognizable. Salt does not just stop decay, it teaches you how to stop your own. It tells you, preserve yourself before you spoil. Keep your soul fresh before it rots. Protect your heart before it is eaten by the world. Every time you see salt, remember this. The same way it fights corruption in food, faith fights corruption in you. What happens to flesh without salt happens to souls without faith. Anger eats them. Greed rots them. Envy spoils them. Lust corrupts them. Pride infects them. And soon, what once was pure becomes unclean. But when faith is there, the soul remains alive. It remains fresh. It remains whole. It remains safe from the unseen diseases of the heart. Salt is not glamorous. It is not praised, but it saves. And faith is the same. It is not always glamorous in the eyes of people. It is not always praised by the world, but it saves. It preserves. It holds back the rot. Imagine walking into a home. You find food preserved with salt. Even after days, it remains strong. You realize someone cared enough to protect it from decay. Now, imagine your soul in the same way. Faith is the salt rubbed on it. Faith is the protection that saves it from being ruined by time. Salt does not make food immortal. It does not stop time forever, but it delays corruption long enough for it to serve its purpose. Faith does the same for you. It doesn't stop the trials of life. It doesn't stop the struggles of existence, but it delays corruption long enough for you to serve your purpose before you return to Allah. Salt whispers, just as I keep flesh from spoiling, let faith keep your soul from spoiling. Just as I keep meat from corruption, let remembrance keep your heart from corruption. Salt and faith are mirrors. Both are small, both are silent, both are unseen, but both are saviors. Think about the nature of rot. It does not happen in one moment. It begins slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. The eye cannot see it. The nose cannot smell it at first. But deep inside, the corruption has already started. That is what happens to the heart without faith. Corruption begins slowly. It starts with one forgotten prayer, one moment of pride, one small lie, one whisper of greed. And in the beginning, no one notices, not even you. But soon, the smell begins to show. The signs begin to surface. The soul begins to spoil. Salt teaches you to act early. It teaches you to preserve before the rot begins. Once decay sets in, it is harder to fight. But if you rub the salt early, if you guard your soul with faith early, you stop corruption before it starts. Salt does not brag about its strength. It does not stand tall and say, I protect this food. It simply does its job in silence. Faith is the same. It does not boast. It does not scream. It simply preserves. When people look at you, they may not see the preservation. They may only see an ordinary person. But deep inside, faith is saving you from the decay that consumes others. The rot of greed, the rot of arrogance, the rot of jealousy, the rot of hopelessness. Faith keeps your soul fresh when the world around you is rotting. Salt is patient. It sits for days, weeks, months, holding back the corruption. Faith, too, is patient. It carries you through years of storms, through trials that should have broken you, through nights that should have destroyed you. But because you carried faith, your soul remained alive. This is why the elders used to say, without faith, the body is just a shell waiting to rot. But with faith, even in the grave, there is light. Even in the silence of earth, there is preservation. Salt also teaches balance. Too little, and it cannot preserve. Too much, and it overwhelms. Faith is the same. Too little, and your heart spoils. Too much force without wisdom, and it hardens. But in balance, it preserves beautifully. Salt does not make food immortal. It allows it to last long enough to be useful. Faith does not make you live forever. It allows you to live long enough to fulfill your purpose before returning. Salt whispers in every grain, protect your soul the way I protect flesh. Stay alive with faith the way food stays alive with me. Do not wait until rot begins. Preserve yourself now. And perhaps that is why salt was chosen as a sign, because in it we see our reflection. Fragile, temporary, vulnerable, but capable of being preserved if we choose the right protection. Salt saves flesh. Faith saves souls. And both remind you of this truth. It is not how long you last that matters. It is what preserves you while you last. Salt as the humblest teacher of tawadu, humility. Salt is everywhere. It sits in kitchens, on tables, in markets, in the corners of homes. Yet no one admires it. No one frames it. No one puts it in a glass case and says, "Look how beautiful this salt is." It is common. It is ordinary. It is overlooked. And still, it is essential. This is the paradox of salt. It is small, but it completes the meal. It is invisible, but it changes everything. It is silent, but its absence is louder than all the spices. Think about it. You can cook with the richest ingredients. You can use the most colorful vegetables, the rarest spices, the finest oils, but if salt is missing, everything feels flat. The effort is wasted. The dish collapses. And yet, when salt is present, no one praises it. No one says, "The salt made this meal." Instead, they praise the cook. They praise the recipe. They praise the flavor. Salt never takes credit. It works in silence. It serves without recognition. It gives everything but asks for nothing. It disappears into the dish, losing its own form, yet leaving its impact. This is the lesson of humility. True humility is not about denying your worth. It is about giving without demanding. It is about serving without needing applause. It is about disappearing in the act of giving, so that only the good remains. Salt is the teacher of tawadu humility. It whispers, "Be like me. Do not chase the spotlight. Do not demand recognition. Do not scream your importance. Just serve. Just complete. Just flavor the lives of others quietly." The greatest servants of Allah were like salt. They walked the earth unnoticed. They prayed in silence. They gave without announcing. They lived without fame. But because of them, the world tasted sweeter. The Sufi masters would say, "The wali is like salt in the dish of creation." You may not see him, but you feel his presence. His humility makes the world livable. Humility does not mean weakness. Salt is proof. It may hide, it may disappear, but without it, everything else is tasteless. This is what the humble believer is. You may not see their name in lights. You may not know their face. You may not hear their story, but their presence flavors the world. Their prayers protect cities. Their service carries communities. Their patience uplifts generations. They are like salt, silent, unseen, but without them, life is bland. Salt also teaches another aspect of humility. It blends. When you add it to food, it does not sit apart. It does not remain as a separate chunk. It dissolves. It becomes part of the whole. It loses itself so that the dish can be complete. This is true humility. To dissolve your ego, to lose your pride, to melt away your self-importance and become part of the whole. Not to erase yourself, but to let your presence elevate everything around you. When salt disappears, the food tastes better. When the ego disappears, the soul tastes better. When pride dissolves, life becomes sweeter. Salt whispers again. Do not stand apart to be noticed. Dissolve to be useful. Disappear to be meaningful. Melt, and let your presence live on through what you give. And isn't that the way of the prophets, the saints, the righteous? They never demanded statues. They never demanded thrones. They never demanded applause. They dissolved into service, and their flavor remains centuries later. Salt teaches that humility is eternal. Pride dies. Ego rots. Arrogance fades. But humility flavors generations. Salt does not compete. It does not look at sugar and say, "Why do people love you more?" It does not look at saffron and say, "Why are you so expensive?" It does not look at pepper and say, "Why are you so famous?" Salt knows its place. It accepts its role. It fulfills its purpose. This is humility. To know that you do not need to be the most praised. You do not need to be the most valued. You do not need to be the most expensive. You just need to serve. Salt shows that humility is freedom. When you are humble, you are not chasing comparisons. You are not fighting for positions. You are not measuring your worth against others. You are simply being what Allah made you to be, and in that, you find peace. Salt is always ready. You don't have to polish it. You don't have to prepare it. It doesn't need decoration. It sits there, simple, but always ready to serve. The humble believer is like this, always ready to help, always ready to support, always ready to flavor someone's life with kindness without needing the world to notice. Salt also teaches us the balance of humility. Too little, and the dish is bland. Too much, and the dish is ruined. The same is true of humility. Too little, and arrogance takes over. Too much false humility, and it becomes weakness, self-hate, or pretending. But true humility, balanced humility, preserves beauty. Salt whispers softly, "Know your place." Do not think too high of yourself, nor too low. Just be what you are meant to be. That is enough. Salt teaches that humility is strength, hidden in silence. It doesn't need to show off. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to display. Its power is known by its effect, not by its appearance. When you eat a meal, you don't say, "The salt was amazing." You say, "The food was amazing." Salt lets others shine. It gives space to others. It lets the flavors of everything else come forward. This is what true humility does. It allows others to be seen, while it works in silence. Humility is not erasing yourself. It is elevating others. It is knowing that your worth is not in applause. Your worth is in service. Your worth is in usefulness. Salt is useful every day. Every home, every dish, every table relies on it. And yet, how often do people thank it? Almost never. This is how the humble servant of Allah lives. They give, they serve, they preserve, they flavor life, and they expect no thank you from people. Their thank you is with Allah alone. Salt dissolves in water. It disappears. And yet, its presence is known by taste. It teaches you that you don't need to be visible to be valuable. You don't need to be seen to matter. You can dissolve, and still your essence will remain. Salt whispers, do not fear disappearing. Fear being useless. Do not fear being forgotten by people. Fear being forgotten by Allah. Disappear in service, and you will live forever in impact. This is why salt is the humblest teacher, because every grain tells you a story of silence, a story of service, a story of strength hidden behind humility. And perhaps this is why it is everywhere, because Allah wanted you to never miss its lesson. You see it daily, you taste it daily, you touch it daily, but do you reflect on it daily? Salt says, every time you see me, remember humility. Every time you taste me, remember silence. Every time you use me, remember service. Do not chase to be known, chase to be useful. Do not chase to be celebrated, chase to be sincere. Salt dissolves in the pot. The cook may forget it, the eater may not mention it, but the taste of salt is always there, changing everything. Humility is the same. People may never know your sacrifices, they may never mention your efforts, they may never see your tears, but the flavor of your humility will remain in their lives in ways they cannot even describe. Salt in Ruqya, the hidden weapon of the believers. Salt is not only taste, it is not only preservation, it is not only humility, it is also a weapon, a hidden weapon, a shield, sharpened by faith, a sword disguised as a grain. For centuries, the righteous used salt in their healing practices, not because they believed salt itself held power, but because they knew Allah had placed within it a mysterious capacity, a capacity to carry blessing, a capacity to repel harm, a capacity to absorb darkness. When the people of wisdom performed Ruqya, spiritual healing, salt was their silent companion. They would mix it with water, they would sprinkle it in homes, they would wash themselves with it. And every time, it was not superstition, it was recognition that Allah hides tools in His creation. And salt was one of those hidden tools. Think about it. Salt dissolves in water. It spreads evenly. It fills every corner of the vessel. It cannot be stopped once it enters. Is this not the perfect symbol of barakah, the perfect mirror of divine blessing, spreading quietly, touching everything, leaving no corner untouched? When recited words of remembrance touched the water, and when salt entered that water, it became more than water. It became a shield, a cleanser, a weapon for the believer, those who suffered from envy, from dark whispers, from unseen chains. They would bathe in salt water, and slowly the heaviness lifted. The fog cleared, the whispers weakened, the chains cracked, not because salt itself was magical, but because Allah had allowed it to carry healing, because salt was chosen as a vessel, a carrier, a servant of light. Salt is humble. It does not fight loudly. It does not announce its battles. It does not leave scars of war. It simply absorbs. It quietly neutralizes. It silently destroys what was trying to destroy you. This is why healers trusted it, because salt never argued. It never resisted its role. It never said, "Why me?" It simply obeyed. It dissolved into the fight and carried away the burden. Salt in Ruqya is like a soldier that dies in silence. It disappears in the water, but in its disappearance, you are healed. It sacrifices itself, its form, its presence, so that you can be safe. This is humility turned into protection. This is service turned into weapon. Every believer who has tasted the weight of envy, every soul that has felt the suffocation of unseen forces, every heart that has been chained by whispers, they know the relief that comes when salt and remembrance combine. It is like a heavy rock being lifted from the chest. It is like a window opening in a dark room. It is like cool air entering lungs that were drowning. Salt whispers, "I am nothing on my own." But when Allah commands, I become a shield. When His words flow over me, I become a sword. When His barakah touches me, I become a vessel of healing. This is why salt in Ruqya is powerful, Because it is a servant. It knows its place. It obeys its role. It disappears for you to be saved. And perhaps the hidden message is this: when you accept your smallness, Allah makes you a weapon. When you surrender your pride, Allah makes you a shield. When you humble yourself like salt, Allah makes you a tool of healing for others. Salt is not loud. It does not shout its victories. It does not display its battles. But in silence, it wins wars you will never even know about. When envy tries to cling, salt absorbs it. When whispers try to grow, salt dissolves them. When dark heaviness tries to suffocate, salt scatters it. The elders understood this secret. They would say, "Keep salt in your home, for it stands guard when your eyes are asleep." And they were right. Because salt's power is not in strength, but in surrender. It obeys. It takes the words of faith upon it and carries them into the fight. Imagine salt as a soldier on the battlefield. It does not carry swords. It does not wear armor. It does not ride horses. It simply stands there, dissolving itself, becoming part of the weapon itself. The moment salt touches water, it vanishes. But in vanishing, it becomes stronger. It spreads. It reaches every corner. It carries blessing where pure water alone may not. This is the hidden power of salt in Ruqya. It reminds you that sometimes your strength is in dissolving, not in resisting. Sometimes your role is not to be seen, but to disappear for the sake of others. Sometimes the greatest defense is selflessness. Salt also teaches the believer that healing is not always visible. You may not see the battle. You may not hear the enemy. You may not notice the chain being broken. But salt is working silently, faithfully, completely. When salt is used in Ruqya, the body feels lighter, the heart feels calmer, the room feels cleaner, the air feels fresher. Nothing visible has changed, but everything has shifted. This is the unseen victory. This is the weaponry of faith. It is not about noise. It is not about drama. It is about quiet transformation. And perhaps this is why Allah placed such secrets in salt, so that the believer would never forget. Your greatest weapons are often silent. Your greatest shields are often unseen. Your greatest strength is not always in what the world claps for, but in what Allah blesses in silence. Salt dissolves, and by dissolving, it saves. It disappears, and by disappearing, it fights. It dies, and by dying, it heals. Isn't this what true service looks like? To give yourself until nothing of you remains, but through your giving, others are protected. Salt whispers, "I do not win because I am strong. I win because I obey. I do not fight because I am mighty. I fight because I surrender. I am nothing on my own, but in His plan, I become a weapon no darkness can resist." So the next time you see salt in your home, remember, it is not just seasoning. It is not just taste. It is not just preservation. It is also a hidden sword, a sword that cuts through what eyes cannot see, a sword that has been carried by believers for centuries, a sword sharpened by humility and strengthened by faith. Salt teaches us another truth. A weapon does not need to look dangerous to be effective. The sword glitters, the shield shines, the arrow cuts through the air, but salt just sits, silent, ordinary. And yet, when the believer knows its place, it becomes a fortress stronger than steel. Darkness fears humility, and salt is humility in crystal form. Darkness fears surrender, and salt is surrender, dissolving, vanishing, melting away. Darkness fears obedience, and salt is obedience. It does not argue with water. It does not resist fire. It simply enters and does its work. Salt in Ruqya reminds us of a secret about healing. Healing is not about noise. It is about alignment. When you align with Allah's wisdom, even the smallest grain becomes a sword. The elders who carried wisdom knew this. They did not fear what others feared. They knew that envy, whispers, and unseen harms were real. But they also knew that Allah had hidden antidotes in His creation, so they turned to salt, not to worship it, not to exaggerate it, but to respect it as one of the tools He placed for healing. Imagine a person weighed down by heaviness. They do not smile. They cannot sleep. They feel trapped, but cannot explain why. The doctors cannot name it. The tests cannot show it. The world cannot see it, but they feel it. And then, a simple act. Water, salt, remembrance. A bath that seems ordinary. A wash that seems small. And suddenly, the weight lifts. The chest loosens. The mind clears. The soul breathes. This is the mystery of salt. It carries away what is not yours to carry. It absorbs what was eating you from the inside. It cleanses what you could not describe. It reminds you, what crushes you is never greater than the mercy surrounding you. Salt in Ruqya is not superstition. It is submission. It is not magic. It is wisdom. It is not a replacement for faith. It is a mirror of faith, because salt shows you how Allah hides cures in places you ignore, how He places weapons in tools you overlook, how He makes the simplest grain carry the heaviest burdens. And maybe this is the most beautiful truth of all. Salt does not only heal you, it teaches you how to heal others. Just as salt dissolves and disappears for the sake of the dish, you too may dissolve and sacrifice for the sake of those you love. You too may carry burdens quietly, without applause. You too may absorb harm by protecting others, and in your silence, you become their shield. Salt whispers this secret. You are stronger when you stop living for yourself alone. You are sharper when you give without expecting. You are a weapon when you surrender to something higher than your ego. So, when you see salt on your table, do not only see taste. See a memory of battles it has fought for centuries. See a weapon disguised as ordinary. See a servant chosen for healing. See a grain that teaches you humility, service, and silent power. And if a crystal of salt can become such a shield, what about you, a soul chosen by Allah? If He can give such power to salt, what do you think He has hidden inside your patience, your tears, to your prayers? Salt is not only a grain, it is a message. It is a reminder. It is a hidden weapon, and it whispers to you every day. Do not underestimate what Allah can turn into a shield, not even yourself. Salt teaches the weight of the smallest deeds. Salt is small, so small that it slips between your fingers, so small that the wind can carry it away, so small that a single grain is almost invisible on the table, and yet that single grain can change everything. One pinch of salt can bring a dead dish to life. One small sprinkle can turn bitterness into balance. One unseen particle can shift the taste of a whole pot. This is how Allah teaches through His creation. He shows us in salt that the smallest things often carry the heaviest weight. The world teaches you to chase the big achievements, big recognition, big names, but salt whispers another truth. The small things are what make life whole. Think of a dish cooked with every ingredient but missing salt. It looks perfect. It smells perfect. It even looks beautiful on the plate. But the first taste tells the truth. Something is missing. It is tasteless. It is empty. Now, think of the smallest grain being added. Nothing visible changes. No one claps. No one notices the moment. But suddenly, everything is transformed. The dish becomes complete. The food becomes alive. The effort becomes worthwhile. Salt whispers, "This is the power of small deeds." They look invisible, but they complete everything. When you smile at someone, it feels small. When you whisper a prayer, it feels small. When you pick up something harmful from the path, it feels small. When you comfort someone in silence, it feels small. But in reality, these are the grains of salt that flavor life. Without them, everything feels empty. With them, everything feels alive. Salt teaches you that size does not decide value. The world may dismiss the small, the ego may overlook the small, but in Allah's wisdom, the small can outweigh the large. A single drop of water can crack stone over time. A single spark can burn down a forest. A single seed can grow into a tree. And a single grain of salt can flavor an entire dish. So do not underestimate your smallest deeds. Do not belittle your quiet kindness. Do not think your unseen patience means nothing. Do not think your hidden prayers go unnoticed. They are like salt, small in size, but heavy in impact. Salt dissolves. It disappears into the dish. You cannot see it anymore, but you taste its presence everywhere. And this is exactly how small deeds work. You may forget them. Others may never know them, but their impact lives on. They dissolve into life, leaving behind a sweetness no one can trace back to you, but Allah knows. Salt teaches you. The world may never thank you. People may never notice you, but Allah sees every grain. The smallest grain of salt reminds you that even the tiniest act of faith can outweigh mountains of neglect. Even a single whisper of gratitude can open doors you didn't knock on. Even the smallest act of honesty can rewrite a story. Even a hidden act of kindness can echo for generations. Salt is proof that the smallest things can shift the largest experiences. You don't need a mountain of it. You don't need a bowl full of it. Sometimes, just a pinch is enough. Isn't that the same with life? One kind word can soften a hardened heart. One act of forgiveness can end years of conflict. One silent prayer can protect you from dangers you never saw. One tear in the night can erase oceans of mistakes. Salt teaches you to respect the little, because the little often carries what the big cannot. Think of this. The sun is huge, yet it cannot grow a tree without a tiny seed. The ocean is vast, yet it cannot quench your thirst without a small drop. A mountain is mighty, yet it begins with a single pebble. And a lifetime of faith is built on small daily acts that seem invisible but carry eternal weight. Salt whispers, "Do not measure your life by the grand. Measure it by the small that lasts." The world claps for the big things. They praise the rich donation, but they ignore the small coin given in secret. They admire the grand speeches, but they forget the quiet word that saved someone from despair. They celebrate the visible victories, but they miss the hidden sacrifices. But Allah never misses. He sees the grains no one else sees. He counts the whispers no one else hears. He weighs the small deeds that you yourself forgot. Salt dissolves into invisibility, but its effect remains until the last bite. And so too are your deeds. Even when you forget them, their fragrance remains. Their taste lingers. Their echo travels farther than you think. Imagine a person walking through a market. They smile at a stranger. The stranger feels lighter. The stranger goes home and treats their family kindly. The family feels joy and treats their neighbors better. And the ripple continues. All from one smile, one small deed, one grain of salt dropped into life. Salt whispers again. You may never know how far your smallest actions travel. You may never see the flavor you added to the world. But I promise you, nothing is wasted. Salt also teaches balance. One grain can change the dish, but too much can ruin it. This is the reminder, even in small deeds, intention matters. It is not about how loud the act looks. It is about the purity behind it. Salt asks for no reward. It never says, "I flavored this meal." It simply gives, dissolves, disappears. And this is the way of the believer: to give without asking, to serve without showing, to dissolve into goodness so deeply that no one sees you, only the sweetness you left behind. Small deeds are like grains of salt scattered across your life. They may look like nothing when they fall, but when gathered, they preserve you. They flavor your story. they protect your soul from decay. Do not think you need to move mountains to matter. Sometimes, a single grain is enough to change everything. Salt is a reminder that what disappears is not always lost. It dissolves, it vanishes, but in its vanishing, the dish becomes alive. Its absence makes it invisible, but its presence makes it unforgettable. This is how your smallest deeds work. They dissolve into time. You forget them. People forget them. But their presence remains in the world. One day, you hold a door open for someone. You forget. But maybe that simple act saved them from despair. Maybe that simple kindness reminded them the world is not cold. Maybe that one grain kept their heart alive. This is how Allah teaches you through salt. You don't need to be remembered by people. You don't need to be applauded by crowds. You just need to dissolve into service. Because Allah remembers what the world forgets. Salt is scattered. A grain here, a grain there. And together, they change everything. So are your deeds. One whispered prayer here. One act of patience there. One moment of forgiveness here. And together, they change your destiny. Do you see how the world teaches you wrongly? It says, do something big to be important. But salt says, do something small to be eternal. Salt dissolves into silence. And in silence, it transforms. Your deeds may not be loud, but in their silence, they are heard by the one who matters most. The beauty of salt is this. It does not compete with the dish. It does not try to be the main flavor. It simply lifts what is already there. Your small deeds work the same way. They do not erase your struggles. They do not remove all your flaws, but they lift you. They balance you. They complete you. Salt teaches you to be consistent. It is never absent from the table. Even in the poorest homes, you will find it. Even in the richest homes, you will find it. This is how small deeds should be. Constant, simple, present every day. You don't need to climb mountains every morning. You don't need to build empires every night. You just need to scatter grains, moments of goodness throughout your day. And over time, those grains will preserve your soul. Salt whispers gently. The smallest deeds carry the greatest weight because they last. They dissolve into your life and flavor every moment after. Do not underestimate what seems invisible. It may be the very thing keeping you alive. Salt teaches patience too. You add it at the beginning, but the flavor is only known at the end. Your deeds may not show results now, but in the end, you will taste them, and you will realize every grain mattered. The world counts size, but Allah counts sincerity, and sincerity is often invisible, like salt dissolved in water. But invisible does not mean powerless. Invisible often means eternal. So, when you hold that small grain of salt, see it as a mirror of your life. Tiny, overlooked, ignored, yet holding the power to shift everything. Salt begins and ends the meal. Just as Allah begins and ends the story. The table is set, the steam rises, the colors call the eyes, yet nothing begins until a tiny white grain touches the tongue. This is the secret rhythm of life. Beginnings that look small, endings that look quiet, and a whole story held together by something most people ignore. Salt arrives first, not because it is grand, but because it prepares the heart to receive. It wakes the taste, balances the body, signals to the soul, start with humility. And when the meal ends, salt returns like a soft curtain closing, reminding you, finish with remembrance. Between those two moments, beginning and ending, are sweetness, bitterness, spice, heat, calm, surprise, comfort. But the first and the last remain the same. Think of the day you were born. You began in silence, carried by hands that shook with love. You did not choose your first breath, your first cry, your first light. It was given to you. And think of the day you will leave. You may not choose the hour, the place, the season. It will be given to you. Between those two points, beginning and ending, are thousands of tastes. Joy, that bursts like ripe fruit, grief that stings like pepper, laughter that melts like butter, fear that burns like chilies, mercy that cools like shade. But the bookends of your life are set by the one who writes stories. Salt simply teaches you to obey that rhythm. Start small, end small. Let the middle be anything, but let the frame be Him. You lift the first bite to your mouth. Before the richness arrives, before the oil speaks, there is the gentle nudge of salt, a reminder to be grateful before you receive. Gratitude is not a speech, it is a slight turn of the heart, a pause, a softness that says, I am not the owner of this moment. That little turn changes the whole dish, the whole day, the whole life. Because when you begin with humility, the flavors enter you differently. They do not rule you, they serve you. They do not inflame your desire, they complete your need. Now, picture the end of a meal. The plates are messy, the napkins tired, the air full of stories told. You could stand and leave, but salt returns for a last whisper. In a world that loves loud endings, fireworks, applause, the final line delivered with a shout, salt teaches you to leave with calm, to end with the same humility you began with, to close the circle gently so that the heart remains unbroken by extremes. Start soft, end soft. In between, be alive. This is not about food alone. This is about how you start your conversations, your journeys, your work, your love, your healing, your nights, your mornings. Begin with a grain of intention so small that only you and your Lord can feel it. Do not begin with a mountain of pride. Start with salt. And when you end, do not throw the door shut. Do not write the last sentence like a knife. Place a grain of salt on the tongue of your ending and let it dissolve into gratitude. Salt does not fight for the spotlight at the beginning. It arrives as a servant. It does not demand applause at the ending. It bows out as a servant. The meal reflects this surrender. Life reflects it too. The soul that starts with surrender does not chase chaos. The soul that ends with surrender does not fear loss. Between the two surrenders, the world can rage, but the inner taste remains balanced. Sometimes, the middle is heavy. There are dishes that test the mouth, spicy chapters, bitter chapters, rich chapters that tire the heart with their weight. You may think the middle defines you, but salt smiles in the quiet. I was there first. I will be there last. The heat will pass through me and become something you can carry. The believer learns this rhythm until it becomes a breathing pattern. Inhale with humility, exhale with gratitude. Inhale with salt, exhale with salt. There are days you will begin with fear. You will doubt the path, the people, even your own hands. Start anyway, but start small. Put a grain of trust on your tongue. Do not demand to see the whole road. Accept the first step. And at night, when you close your eyes, do not measure the day by how loud it was. Measure it by whether you left with softness. Did you end closer than you began? Did you end lighter than you began? Salt asks these questions without words. In homes of the old, a tiny bowl of salt sat near the stove like a quiet guardian. It did not move much, but it touched everything. This is how beginnings and endings should live in you. Keep them close, ready, simple. Let them touch everything you do. If your start is swollen with ego, the dish will rebel. If your finish is sharp with arrogance, the room will grow cold. But if you frame your days with smallness and thanks, the middle can be messy and still feel holy. A traveler once ate with strangers in a dim room lit by one flame. The food was basic, the water warm, yet he left with tears in his eyes. Why? Because the meal began with a quiet gesture of care, and it ended with a silent nod of praise to the giver. The middle was not expensive, but the frame was sacred. Salt had done its job. The traveler slept that night with a full heart, though his plate had been simple. This is the power of right beginnings and right endings. They turn ordinary moments into worship. When love begins, begin with a grain of respect. When work begins, begin with a grain of truth. When study begins, begin with a grain of patience. When healing begins, begin with a grain of acceptance. When repentance begins, begin with a grain of honesty. And when any of these end with a grain of gratitude. Do not flood the start with fireworks. Do not flood the end with excuses. Salt is small for a reason. The soul grows best under a gentle rain. Consider the ocean. It looks endless, powerful, wild, but taste it, and you will know salt is everywhere. It keeps the water from spoiling. It keeps the life within it alive. The sea begins and ends in salt, and yet ships cross it. Storms rise and fall. Horizons open and close. Your life is like that sea. Let your beginning and ending be salted with remembrance, and let the storms come. You will cross. People chase a grand entrance. They rehearse a grand exit. But the ones who carry light enter quietly and leave quietly. Salt teaches the art of quiet. The first grain does not announce itself, yet the tongue listens. The last grain does not take a bow, yet the heart remembers. You do not need thunder to be felt. You need sincerity at the door and sincerity at the gate. There will be meals you finish with regret. Too much heat, too much hurry, too little care. Do not despise those meals. Let salt teach you. The next time, start slower. The next time, end softer. Life is a kitchen where humility is learned by burning and balance is learned by tasting. Salt is both teacher and friend. It returns to try again, never offended, never dramatic, always ready. Have you noticed how salt dissolves? It does not sit as a rock in your mouth. It melts into the dish until you can no longer point at it and say, "There it is." That is how a beginning should be once it has done its job. It disappears and lets the story live. That is how an ending should be. Once it has closed the door, it leaves no echo of pride. The best frames are felt more than seen. In rooms where hearts are healing, you will find this pattern. A soft opening, a soft closing. Voices do not collide. Egos do not compete. Faces relax. The middle may hold tears, confessions, and long silences. But the frame is gentle. The room becomes safe because salt holds its first and last corners. And in that safety, truth rises like bread. When you teach a child to eat, you do not begin with a mountain of spice. You begin with a small taste, a steady hand, a patient smile. When you teach your soul to live, do the same. Do not throw yourself into extreme flavors that exhaust your spirit. Place a grain at the start of each day, a simple intention, an honest breath. Place a grain at the end, a simple thanks, a gentle letting go. Over time, your inner taste becomes wise. There will be seasons when the middle is bitter. You will not be able to sweeten it by force. Add salt, not as denial, but as balance. Acknowledge the pain, then frame it with surrender. Bitter within a humble frame becomes medicine. Bitter within a proud frame becomes poison. Salt can turn harshness into meaning because it tells the tongue to listen quietly first and to rest quietly last. In gatherings of remembrance, the beginning is often a pause, not a lecture, a pause. The ending is often a silence, not a performance. These are salty bookends, small, simple, strong. They keep the soul from overheating. They keep the mind from drowning in its own sound. They give space for the middle to be real. The person who starts their day with the world in their hands leaves their day with the world on their chest. The person who starts with a grain of surrender leaves with a chest that can breathe. Both lived the same hours. Both faced similar winds, but only one set the frame correctly. Salt was on one tongue and not on the other. If you have ever apologized poorly, you know the taste of a wrong ending. The words are right, but the heart is stiff. Try again with salt. Soften first. Let the ending be smaller than your ego. Taste the humility that dissolves the knot. A good ending does not prove you were never wrong. it proves you finally became right inside. And if you have ever begun something with noise, you know the fatigue that follows. The first step was a shout, the second step, already a sigh. Begin again with a grain, quiet, clear, honest. Let smallness carry you farther than loudness. Salt can walk where thunder gets tired. There is a reason the elders placed a tiny pinch on the tongue when health was weak. It was not a trick, it was a reminder. Wake the taste gently, wake the body gently, wake the soul gently. The ones who wake gently endure the day with grace. The ones who slam the door open meet the day already drained. The mystery is this: when you honor the beginning and the ending, the middle honors you back. Work flows, people soften, doors that were shut without reason begin to give way, not because you learned every trick, but because you stood in the right posture when you entered and when you left. The posture of salt is surrender. It does not bend the world, it bends itself. And the world, seeing a heart that bends, often becomes flexible in return. At the last bite, linger. Let the heart catch up. Let your tongue remember that the whole meal was a gift. Do not run from the table with the hunger for the next thing already roaring. Pause. Place that last grain on your tongue, quiet gratitude, and step away like a visitor who knows he never owned the feast. This is how you end a day, a conversation, a chapter, a life, not clutching, but returning. And when morning comes again, begin as if you have never eaten before. Not with fear, but with wonder. Even if yesterday was heavy, do not start with the memory of weight. Start with a grain of hope. The soul forgets how to hope when beginnings are made of noise. Teach it with salt, small, steady, certain. One day, you will tell your story. Make sure the listener tastes your beginnings and endings more than your victories. Let them taste your humility at the door and your gratitude at the gate. Let them see that you learn to hold power like salt, always ready to dissolve, if that is what brings balance. If a grain can frame a meal, a breath can frame a life. Breathe in with surrender. Breathe out with thanks. Let that be your salt. Carry it into rooms where people argue, and you will notice that the air changes. Carry it into decisions that frighten you, and you will feel a lightness inside the fear. Carry it into grief, and the grief will still be sharp, but it will not be shapeless. The middle can be complicated. Allow it. You do not need to control every flavor, but hold the frame. Hold the first and last taste with care, and the complexity will teach you instead of swallowing you. This is the secret of chefs who cook with love. They honor the small things so the large things fall into harmony. So, tonight, as you sit with whatever your life is serving, success with its heavy cream, loss with its dry bread, new chances with their bright herbs, reach first for the little bowl that everyone forgets. Take a grain, place it on your tongue, begin small, and when you are ready to leave, find that bowl again. Take another grain, end small. Between them, be fully human, but at the bookends, be fully surrendered. This is what salt has been trying to say since the first kitchen fire. Do not make the start about you. Do not make the end about you. Make them about the one who gave you a middle to live. If you remember this, your story will taste right, even when parts of it are hard to swallow. And the ones who share your table will feel it too, without knowing why. They will say, "There is peace in this room." And you will smile, because you know, the peace is not in the furniture, nor in the perfect recipe. It is in the way you touch the first and last moments, with a grain that disappears and a grace that remains. The golden whisper, nothing is ordinary, when Allah places barakah lesson inside it. Look at salt, ordinary, cheap, ignored, so common that no one writes poetry for it, no one hangs it as jewelry, no one marvels at it in the market. And yet, without it, nothing tastes right. Without it, life feels incomplete. This is barakah. When Allah places blessing inside something, the world may call it ordinary, but its absence is unbearable. It may be small, but it fills spaces larger than itself. It may be hidden, but it carries weight heavier than mountains. Barakah is what makes little enough. Barakah is what makes the unnoticed precious. Barakah is what makes the simple sacred. And salt is the perfect example of this golden truth. A pinch on your tongue, and suddenly bitterness fades. Sweetness shines brighter. Balance returns. How? Not because salt is powerful in appearance, but because Allah placed a secret within it. The Sufi masters used to say, "Do not ask the world what is valuable. Ask Allah what He has placed barakah in." For sometimes, the stone the world steps on is the jewel of the heavens. Think of your own life. A small deed, a tiny word, a quiet prayer, they may look ordinary, but with barakah, they change destinies. One coin given sincerely outweighs piles of gold given for pride. One smile given to a broken heart outweighs speeches delivered to crowds. One tear shed in the dark outweighs oceans of performance in the light. Salt whispers, "Do not measure by size, measure by barakah." Do not ask, "Is this enough?" Ask, "Is Allah in this?" You may cook with the finest ingredients, travel with the heaviest luggage, live with endless possessions. But if barakah is absent, nothing satisfies. You can have much, but feel empty. You can eat much, but remain hungry. You can own much, but feel poor. And the opposite is also true. With barakah, little becomes enough. With barakah, a crust of bread becomes a feast. With barakah, a single conversation becomes a lifetime of healing. With barakah, a single moment becomes eternity. Salt is ordinary, but with barakah, it carries 70 cures. Water is simple, but with barakah, it becomes a purifier. Dates are small, but with barakah, they carry strength for days. The world sees ordinary. Allah places extraordinary. Barakah is the golden whisper in creation. It is the secret perfume no one sees, but everyone smells. It is the quiet touch that multiplies, extends, heals, and transforms. You thought salt was ordinary, just another grain on your table, but tonight you've seen it differently. You've seen that in its silence, there is a shield. In its smallness, there is a cure. In its humility, there is a lesson. And in its presence, there is barakah. Now remember, if Allah can place such power inside a grain of salt, what do you think He has placed inside you? You, who breathe, who feel, who pray, who cry at night. Do you really think He created you ordinary? No. You are the living proof that barakah hides in what the world overlooks. So leave tonight with this whisper. Nothing in your life is wasted. No tear, no prayer, no struggle, no moment of patience. If He can turn salt into healing, He can turn your smallest deed into light that never ends. The next time you see salt, don't just see seasoning. See a reminder, see a teacher, see a grain that whispers to your soul. Nothing is small when Allah places His blessing inside it. And as you close your eyes tonight, know this: you are not forgotten, you are not ordinary, and you are not empty. You are salted with His mercy, preserved with His protection, and flavored with His love. Barakah surrounds you, even when you cannot see it. This is the golden whisper. Carry it with you, and never again call anything ordinary.